trying to do is get a preponderance of evidence together so that we can prove the point that there's ruins all over the planet. And just as you would here on Earth, you're going to look for straight lines, parallel lines, circles, squares, rectangles, things of this nature. And when you find them, then you can start to zoom in on areas and look for even stronger details.
On July 25, 1976, a NASA scientist was reviewing images of a region on Mars called Cydonia when something unusual caught his attention.
There is a not insignificant group of people that think that we've already discovered life on Mars, that there are structures there, that there are buildings, obelisks, some kind of indicator of ancient cultures that is being covered up.
He had to take a moment to process what he was looking at. Grabbing a magnifying glass, he confirmed what he saw, a massive structure on Mars, 140 million miles away.
Taking lander photographs, it was discovered that there was this weird-looking structure that looks for all the world in the Viking photos like a face.
Shaped like a human face. It was enormous, about a mile wide, and featured 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Surrounding the face were pyramids and other formations that didn't seem natural. They appeared to be constructed. The next day, NASA held a press conference. Out of the thousands of photos sent back from Mars, everyone wanted to know about the face. Who built it? Why was it there? Could it be a message from a long-lost advanced civilization? Was it a religious relic? Was it solid, like the Great Sphinx? Or could it have hidden chambers like the Great Pyramid? NASA, however, dismissed the speculation.
An unusual square structure on Mars? What's up with that?
They claimed that there was a second photo of the same area taken shortly after, proving the face was nothing more than a trick of light and shadow. The problem? The second photo doesn't exist. So why did NASA make this claim? The answer might lie in the other images they captured. Let's dive into this mystery and also uncover why Brian Cox believes that Mars colonization is a dangerous idea. Mars has fascinated humanity for centuries. The ancient Egyptians viewed Mars as a god, while the Greeks named it after their god of war. But it wasn't until the 19th century that we began to uncover some of its secrets. In 1877, Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli observed strange surface markings on Mars that he called canali. Although canali simply means channels in Italian, the media misunderstood it as canals, sparking speculation about an intelligent Martian race. As technology advanced, the space race brought us closer to Mars. In 1965, the Mariner 4 probe sent back 22 images of the planet. While groundbreaking, the photos were disappointing. There were no cities, canals, or signs of an ancient civilization. Mars resembled the moon, barren, harsh, cratered by meteors, and lifeless. Yet further advancements in technology made the idea of life on Mars less implausible. While it's cold and desolate now, Mars wasn't always this way. Long ago, it was a planet covered in vast oceans, with rivers and lakes. It had a dense atmosphere that kept the surface warm, volcanic activity, and even a global magnetic field. Once, Mars was a blue planet with the conditions necessary to support life. In 1975, NASA launched Viking 1 and Viking 2, 2 spacecraft designed to study Mars. Each carried an orbiter equipped with high-resolution cameras and a lander. By the summer of 1976, both had reached Mars, taking thousands of photographs. NASA scientist Toby Owen, tasked with selecting landing sites, discovered the face in image 35A72. Thrilled, he shared it with the press to generate public excitement about Mars exploration. The strategy worked too well. The face dominated headlines, forcing NASA to downplay its significance. They insisted it was a mere optical illusion, supposedly disproved by a second photograph taken hours later. Funny thing is, that second photo was never shown, and no one thought to question it. Despite the controversy, Cydonia remains a leading candidate for Viking 2's landing site. The area was flat, with excellent visibility and intriguing rock formations. But shortly after the face photo was released, Viking 2 landed in Utopia Planitia, a barren, rocky expanse. One mission scientist compared it to landing in the Sahara and expecting to find a garden. So why the abrupt change in landing site? Could there be something in Cydonia that NASA didn't want us to see? The answer might just be yes, plenty of things. Monuments are rarely created in isolation. The pyramids in Egypt or those in the Central and South America were never just single structures. They were parts of vast complexes that included temples, town squares, and other buildings. So, if an ancient civilization on Mars constructed a monument resembling a humanoid head, we would naturally expect to find additional structures nearby. And, as it turns out, that's exactly what has been observed. Close to the face on Mars, there's a cluster of pyramids, often referred to as the City Square. Nearby lies another formation called the Fortress, which appears to be the remnants of a collapsed pyramid. Then there's the D&M Pyramid, named after NASA imaging scientists Vincent DiPetrio and Greg Molinar. This structure, standing 1.5 meters tall with 5 sides, is 3 times larger than Egypt's largest pyramid. What makes the D&M Pyramid particularly fascinating is its symmetry along 2 axes. While some might dismiss these formations as coincidental, the proximity of these strange structures to the face raises questions. Enter Errol Torin, a satellite imaging expert from the Defense Mapping Agency. His job was to analyze satellite images and distinguish between natural and artificial objects. After examining these Martian formations, including the face, Torin concluded that they were not of natural origin. The D&M Pyramid, in particular, captured his attention. He described it as the Rosetta Stone of Mars, noting its unique 5-sided shape and bilateral symmetry, unlike any landform found elsewhere in their solar system. Torin also identified mathematical relationships between the formations, and as additional images from Mars emerged, more strange objects came to light. Over the past 50 years, countless photos from Mars have revealed anomalies that seem out of place. For example, there's a towering rectangular monolith, another monolith standing over 10 miles high, and an object nicknamed the Shipwreck, which resembles a boat's remains or the foundation of a structure. In May 2022, the Curiosity rover discovered a doorway carved into a rock face. What lies beyond it remains a mystery. Massive tracks in the Martian surface suggest a colossal machine might have created them. Other formations are equally puzzling. The Martian totem pole defies explanations of natural erosion, while a dome-shaped structure, dubbed a glass worm by Arthur C. Clarke, adds to the intrigue. A particularly curious object is a moving orb of light captured in still images. Skeptics claim it's a dead pixel, but dead pixels don't shift positions within the frame, and this orb appears far larger than a single pixel. One of the most striking anomalies is an imprint resembling a valve or gear, captured by Opportunity's microscopic imager. Could this mark have been left by an ancient machine? Then there's a saucer-shaped structure photographed by the Mars Global Surveyor in 2000, which stands out distinctly against the surrounding terrain. These are just a handful of the countless anomalies discovered on Mars, with many more still waiting to be explored. Years after the infamous photo of the face on Mars was released, DiPetrio and Molinar searched for the original image to analyze it themselves. Initially, they struggled to locate it, as it had been misfiled. Eventually, they uncovered the image labeled Head in the Viking archives. After reviewing it, they concluded that there was more to the face than just light and shadow. Seeking further clarity, they searched for a second photo. One NASA claim proved the face was an illusion. Like the first, it was also misfiled, but eventually found, revealing even more detail. Errol Torin also believed the face was more than just an optical illusion. However, to confirm or debunk these theories, additional photos were needed. Yet despite other images being taken of the face, many of them mysteriously seemed to vanish. They also couldn't locate the so-called disconfirming photographs that Gerald Soffit had referenced 5 years earlier. However, while searching, they stumbled upon a second photo of the face on Mars, which had been filed incorrectly. This second image provided more clarity, with less shadow on the left side of the face. It appeared to show 2 eye sockets, a nose, and even a mouth. The strangest part, though, was the structure surrounding the face. 2 parallel sides of equal length, each hundreds of yards long and perfectly straight, with the top and bottom edges curved to the same radius. It resembled a symmetrical framed platform for the face. According to geologists and imaging experts, the base of the face, if that's what it was, didn't look like anything you'd typically find in nature. DiPetrio conducted further analysis and identified what seemed to be a pupil in the left eye socket. NASA dismissed these findings, so the 2 researchers turned to outside experts. This is where science journalist Richard Hoagland entered the scene. Hoagland organized an independent research team to study the images more thoroughly, bringing in computer imaging specialist Dr. Mark Carlotto. Using advanced image enhancement techniques, Carlotto uncovered details that appeared to include teeth in the mouth and a strange stripe pattern on the platform surrounding the face. Encouraged by these findings, Hoagland arranged a meeting with Carl Sagan to present the results. Yes, the Carl Sagan, the billions and billions guy famous for his turtleneck sweaters. During the meeting, Sagan seemed impressed, but he later publicly dismissed the face on Mars theory in the press. Hoagland, undeterred, continued to press NASA for additional images of the face, but NASA maintained that further photographs were unnecessary. What NASA underestimated, however, was Hoagland's reach. With regular appearances on Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM, a radio show with a massive audience, Hoagland rallied public support. Through letter-writing campaigns and call-ins, he put significant pressure on NASA to capture new images of the face and the pyramids at Cydonia. NASA resisted at first, but the mounting public pressure coincided with the agency's plans to return to Mars. In 1993, NASA launched the Mars Observer, the first mission to the Red Planet since the Viking era. Initially, NASA didn't even plan to include a camera on the spacecraft, but public outcry forced them to add one. The anticipation was immense, as the Mars Observer's new camera had the potential to finally settle the debate over the face and pyramids. Despite this, NASA maintained its lack of interest in photographing Cydonia. The back-and-forth debate continued right up until 3 days before the Mars Observer was sent to enter orbit around Mars. The Sunday before the Mars Observer was launched into orbit, NASA sent Dr. Bevan French, the lead project scientist, to debate Richard Hoagland on Good Morning America. To put it mildly, the debate did not go in NASA's favor. At the center of the discussion was a set of extraordinary data that, according to proper scientific method, warranted further investigation. The issue, however, was that some people within NASA, particularly those in charge of the next mission, which involved the camera I mentioned earlier, were not particularly enthusiastic about conducting the simple test. They were, strangely, unwilling to guarantee that taking new pictures was even on the Mars Observer's mission agenda. By the end of the debate, even the host was asking NASA, "Why don't you just take the pictures and prove these guys wrong?" Dr. French didn't have a satisfactory answer. What happened next raised even more eyebrows. Less than 5 minutes after the debate aired, NASA made a sudden announcement. The Mars Observer probe had disappeared, and they had lost all contact with it. Wait, what? Hoagland and others claimed they were receiving leaked information from NASA insiders. According to these sources, the Mars Observer was still operational and taking pictures of the face and other strange objects on Mars. However, even if NASA had those images, they couldn't release them publicly, especially if they showed that the face was an artificial structure. NASA continued to insist that the face was just a natural rock formation. But since they couldn't photograph it to prove their point, they did the next best thing. They created an image. 5 years after the Mars Observer incident, NASA launched a new probe called Mars Global Surveyor. 3, 2, 1, ignition and liftoff. America was headed back to Mars. Despite having access to newer, better cameras, NASA chose to use the older equipment. Once again, NASA was reluctant to take pictures of Cydonia and the face, but after public pressure, they finally agreed to capture a few images. Then, on April 5, 1998, NASA made a major announcement. They had released a highly detailed picture of the face on Mars. But what was actually revealed was a grainy, noise-filled image taken in poor lighting and bad weather, with multiple filters applied. That night, on the Art Bell program, Hoagland and his team were furious. Bell, for his part, remarked that the image looked like something that his cat might scratch up in her litter box. From that moment on, it became known as the cat box image. It seemed that this image had been deliberately manipulated by NASA. Land Fleming, a NASA contractor, examined the original source data and tried to reproduce the cat box image. Initially, he couldn't, but after applying 14 different Photoshop filters, he managed to do so. He soon realized this couldn't have been an accident. JPL, or the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, had removed much of the tonal variation from the original image, which is what gives the object its three-dimensional appearance. They added false visual cues that made the object appear rough and jumbled, even distorting the surrounding terrain. The catbox image isn't simply a poor enhancement, as it's often called. It's a crude but effective deception carried out by employees or contractors working for the US government. Since the first color images returned from Mars, there's always been something off about them. The colors were dominated by an unusual orange haze. NASA claimed that this was due to the carbon dioxide and red dust in the atmosphere. However, a carbon dioxide-rich atmosphere would still have a blue sky, though it would be a grayish blue, not a deep blue like Earth's. Yet the photos from Mars showed a sky that looked reddish-green. So what's going on? These images presented Mars' surface as a bizarre alien world, but they didn't accurately represent the colors. Nothing in nature is uniformly one color. For some reason, before releasing the images, NASA applied an orange filter to them. In the 1990s, few questioned this, but modern digital photography software, like Photoshop, can easily detect if a single color has been uniformly applied to an image. This is a simple calculation for software, and it's how white balancing is done in photography and video. It's so easy that today's versions of Photoshop even offer a one-click solution to correct false colors. NASA eventually realized their orange filter trick wasn't fooling anyone, so recent images of Mars no longer have that odd orange tint. Today, even NASA's pictures show a blue-gray sky and a more colorful landscape. But why would NASA want to hide Mars's blue skies in the first place? Some speculate it's to make Mars seem more alien and less inviting for potential exploration. If Mars once had oceans, a thick atmosphere, and the conditions for life, the big question becomes, what happened to any ancient civilization that might have existed there? And could the answer be why governments have kept the truth about Mars under wraps for so long? There's evidence, scientific evidence, that millions of years ago, Mars may have been devastated by a global nuclear war. When the Curiosity rover landed on Mars in 2012, it began analyzing surface samples. NASA scientists expected to find soil with heavily oxidized iron, and they did. But what shocked everyone was the discovery of xenon-129, an isotope that on Earth is produced only by nuclear explosions. Over 70 years of nuclear testing on Earth have left small amounts of xenon-129 in our atmosphere, but the amount found in Martian soil is 2.5 times higher. Dr. John Brandenburg, a former NASA physicist and Mars researcher, believes this is the signature of a massive nuclear event. He claims this is a nuclear weapon signature. There's no other process that can create such a xenon spectral. According to him, the amount of xenon-129 suggests an explosion equivalent to 1,000 megatons, 50,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Brandenburg identified 2 radiation hotspots on Mars, with Cydonia, the location of the infamous face, and other alleged structures situated between them. Dating the isotopes suggests that these explosions occurred 150 to 300 million years ago. At that time, Mars was a blue planet with oceans and a thick atmosphere. Such a massive nuclear explosion could explain how Mars lost its atmosphere. Most scientists today believe it's just an illusion. When NASA released a detailed image of the face, showing it to be nothing more than a pile of rocks, they thought they'd debunked the conspiracy. The issue, however, is that NASA alters images, every single one they release to the public. According to NASA, these adjustments are meant to make the images clearer and more visually appealing. Now, I'm not a fan of NASA employing artists to Photoshop images, but I understand why some photos might need tweaking to be more digestible to the public. Still, there are some NASA Photoshops that raise eyebrows. For instance, take the famous photo of Earth from Apollo 17 and compare it to a 3D model of Earth released by Google and the US Navy. The model, which is supposed to be mathematically perfect, has land masses that don't align. Not even close. How much you trust NASA is ultimately up to you, but I wouldn't give them my full trust. Some people take their skepticism to extremes with Mars images. Personally, I don't see these supposed anomalies unless someone explicitly points them out. Most of those images feel like a stretch to me, but the face on Mars? That one I can see clearly without any help. As for Richard Hoagland, I've mentioned him often, especially on After Files. He was always one of my favorite guests on Art Bell, an engaging speaker and highly entertaining. But he has his share of critics as well. Sites like Bad Astronomy and Skeptical Inquirer have targeted him, accusing him of exaggerating his credentials and experience. He got millions of ordinary people interested in the space program. Thanks to him, NASA was pressured into taking photos of Mars that we might never have seen otherwise. He also reminded us that we need to keep a close eye on NASA. People like Richard Hoagland are essential, watchdogs with access and influence who hold institutions accountable. Then there's Dr. John Brandenburg and his theory of a nuclear war on Mars. Dr. Brandenburg is a respected scientist with solid credentials. His early paper suggests that a nuclear event on Mars occurred naturally. After all, a uranium mine on Gabon, Africa shows evidence of natural nuclear fission, so it's not far-fetched to think something similar could happen on Mars. However, Brandenburg later proposed that the event on Mars wasn't natural. He argued that isotopes of xenon-129 could only result from the detonation of a nuclear weapon. I've read both sides of this debate, and I'm not sure who's right. What I do know is that Brandenburg's theory of a nuclear war on Mars was rejected for peer review. But mainstream scientists aren't always correct. They often have agendas. Right or wrong, Brandenburg's theory is fascinating and deserves serious study, not ridicule. Unfortunately, talking about Mars invites ridicule. Yes, most anomalies in Mars photos can be explained, but a few remain puzzling. We've sent mission after mission to Mars, and yet we haven't sent a rover to thoroughly explore Cydonia and examine the supposed face. NASA claims there's nothing there, so it would be a waste of resources. But with all due respect to NASA, their resources come from us, the public, and we deserve to know the truth about the face on Mars. So what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe for more.